Of course, you want the visa process to go as quickly and as smoothly as possible, but right now we are facing historical high processing times. While there's nothing we can do to make the government go faster, there are things that we can do to make sure that you don't do something that makes the visa process take longer than it needs to. One thing that can potentially cause big delays when it comes to the visa process is your taxes. This is immigration attorney Amanda Thomas. In this video, I'm going to talk about how your taxes can be a big immigration pitfall, so keep watching. There's a saying in the US, there's nothing certain in life but death and taxes. And that was Benjamin Franklin that said that, one of our founding fathers. I doubt that Benjamin Franklin had any idea that we would be discussing his quote in this context all the way in 2022. But taxes have a big effect on your life, and it can even affect the immigration process. So here are 4 ways that your taxes could potentially affect your visa. Number 1, proving your income as a sponsor on the I-864 affidavit of support. Family-based visas require a sponsor to prove that they have adequate enough financial capability to support the intending immigrant. The main way to prove that you're a good sponsor is by showing that you meet at least 125% of the federal poverty guidelines. Using your income to meet this requirement means that you have to show either your most recent 1040 or your tax return transcript. If you have filed your taxes for the most recent year, this is going to be easy for you. It's even okay if you have a tax extension. But some people encounter tax problems that prevent them from filing for several years, and this can happen for many reasons. For instance, some people are self-employed or they are independent contractors and they unintentionally get themselves into a tax debt because they didn't set aside enough money to pay their taxes at the end of the year. Whatever the problem is, you're going to need to get it figured out because the government isn't going to make an exception for you. You have to include the most recent year's tax returns. Having a joint sponsor doesn't alleviate your responsibility of properly filing your taxes, and it doesn't alleviate your responsibility for proving your income with your most recent year of tax returns for the affidavit of support. Having a tax problem can take months to sort out. It may mean that you need to get on a payment plan. If you have a complicated tax situation, it may mean that you have to pay an accountant or pay a tax attorney to figure out the problem for you. But this needs to be done because you won't get your visa until you are able to provide the National Visa Center with your most recent year of taxes. So even though it may be frustrating to figure it out, waiting to figure it out is only going to delay your process even longer. This brings me to the next way that your taxes can delay the visa process. Number 2, confusion stemming from complicated tax filings. Tax filings can get complicated, especially if you have a non-traditional source of income, such as being part of the gig economy, being self-employed, or having your income come from pension or Social Security. Generally, the National Visa Center wants to see either your 1040 and W-2s or your federal tax return transcript, but that is not an all-encompassing rule. It can sometimes be hard to tell which tax documents the National Visa Center wants to see, and it can be especially hard when you have multiple sources of income. For instance, the National Visa Center much prefers to see your federal tax return transcript over seeing your 1040. However, if your tax filing status is married filing jointly, the National Visa Center is also going to want to see your W-2 in addition to seeing the tax return transcript. This is because if you're married filing jointly, they're going to want to make sure to see how much money the sponsor is actually making, which is why they require the W-2s. Another example is if you are self-employed, the National Visa Center is going to want to see your 1040 and your Schedule C. Yet another example is if you are part of the gig economy and you have multiple 1099s for multiple sources of income, the National Visa Center is going to want to see every 1099 that you have. If you have a complicated tax situation, not only will it be hard for you to predict which documents the National Visa Center is going to want to see, but it can be hard for the clerks at the National Visa Center to understand which documents they actually need from you. This is because the clerks who review paperwork in the National Visa Center also aren't tax specialists. They only have the training that has been given to them. So if you have a complicated tax situation, it's really important that you keep track of every single tax document that you get. And it's really important to make a plan on how you're going to communicate that to the National Visa Center when you're submitting documents through the SEAC system. Not only do you want to provide them with every document that they may need, but you want to be able to communicate to them that you are, in fact, giving them all of the documents that they need to make a decision on your application. The third way that taxes could delay the visa process is if you filed in an improper status. Determining what your tax filing status is depends on what your marital status is on the last day of the tax year. Taxpayers are considered married for the whole year if they are married on at least the last day of the tax filing year. Married people can generally choose to file jointly or separately. Choosing which status to file under depends on your particular circumstances. But you should know that if you qualify as married under the definition provided by the IRS, it is improper to file as single. It doesn't matter if your spouse is not in the United States. It doesn't matter if your spouse isn't a legal permanent resident or not a U.S. citizen. You are still married under the definition of the IRS. The Foreign Affairs Manual specifically states that consular officers do not have the authority to require an individual to pay taxes or to report correctly. So filing in the wrong status may not necessarily prevent you from becoming documentarily qualified, and it may not prevent you from eventually being scheduled for an interview. However, in addition to the income requirement, a consular officer is also required to make a determination about whether or not your relationship is bona fide. A bona fide marriage means that it is not entered into for the sole purposes of immigration. The consular officer is going to look at the totality of the circumstances. And one of the things that they may consider when determining if your relationship is bona fide is whether or not someone lists on a federal document that they are single when in fact they are legally married. However, the consular officer may view this as an innocent mistake. They are going to look at all of the evidence in totality to determine if they believe that your relationship is bona fide. So filing in a single status when you're legally actually married may not prevent you from even getting the visa. But you should know down the line, especially if you're applying for a spouse that will get a conditional residence, they are going to look at that in the future again. So you need to make sure that you're filing your taxes in a proper status. The fourth way that your taxes can affect the visa process is that seriously delinquent tax debts can actually cause your passport to be revoked. Consular processing is taking longer than it ever has in the past, and this means that families remain separated far too long. When your spouse is required to wait in their home country to get their visa, this means that you're going to have to do some traveling back and forth to maintain your relationship. A lot of people don't know that having a seriously delinquent tax debt can actually cause their passport to be revoked. And if you don't have a valid passport, you can't travel to a different country to visit your family. If you have a seriously delinquent tax debt, you should talk to an accountant or a tax attorney. I know that you probably feel that if you have a delinquent tax debt, you don't have enough money to hire an accountant or to hire an attorney. I know that you probably feel that if you have a delinquent tax debt, you probably don't have enough money to hire an accountant or to hire an attorney. But your taxes can seriously back you into a corner when it comes to immigration. And the longer you wait to get this problem figured out, the longer you're going to remain separated from your family. Of course, I would be happy to consult with you about your visa process at the National Visa Center, whether it comes to taxes, your passport, or anything else. Of course, I would be willing to consult with you about this if you have any questions when it comes to your taxes or how it may affect your visa process. I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you found this video informative. And if you did, I would hope that you would like this video and subscribe so that you can be notified whenever I post anything new.